from TSN Hockey Insider Darren Dreger joins us. Dregs, we made it. 82 games. The slog is over. Now we get down to it.
All the good stuff.
We were just kind of talking about the Oilers and this whole, the Kings score last night to get the Oilers. What a mistake this is. I don't know. Ryan said, pick your poison. The Stars or the Oilers in round one, not ideal for the LA Kings, one way or the other, I don't think.
No, I think you're right. But, it's the new season, right? And I can assure you, just in conversation with those closely involved with the Edmonton Oilers this morning, I mean, they'll take nothing for granted when it comes to, playing the Los Angeles Kings. They actually feel like they match up pretty well. The power play, of course, of the Edmonton Oilers can get humming. So that's more on Los Angeles to stay as disciplined as they can. Very structured team, LA, and they've got depth in the right position. So, is Edmonton ready? Are they battle tested to the playoffs? I mean, 2 years ago, they lose in the conference final to Colorado. They go on to win the Stanley Cup. Last year, deeply disappointed in losing to the Vegas Golden Knights, but Vegas went on to win the Stanley Cup. So Edmonton has that added layer of pressure that, okay, they've been tested the last couple of years. So now it's time to go a notch deeper, and that's contend for the Stanley Cup. And I don't know what you guys think. Many think that they're going to win the West. I'm not convinced of it, because of the respect that I have for the Dallas Stars. The addition of Chris Tanev there has really made them a better all-around club. Are the Vancouver Canucks as deep and as ready as they showed in the regular season? You can't sleep on the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, Connor Hellebuck arguably is the best goalie in the league right now. Colorado could get goalied by the Winnipeg Jets. So, Edmonton, there's a bit of a nervous tension around that organization. They feel like they're ready, but LA feels like they're ready too. So let's see how it plays out.
You talked about special teams there. This matchup's huge. We know the Oilers' power play can be incredible. It finishes fourth, which is lower than we've seen, but we know all the weapons are there. LA's penalty kill is second. Like, does that not feel like the series right there? I understand that there's lots of 5-on-5 hockey, but if you were building a team to try to stop the other team from scoring goals, it's LA's depth down the middle, and it's an elite penalty kill, because that's how the Oilers kill teams.
Yeah, and going in, that's kind of what Edmonton feels is like they've got to win the 5-on-5 game here. That's ultimately what it's going to boil down to. Does Edmonton have enough players willing to be as patient as you need to be and then pounce on those opportunities? Yeah, we know that, you make a mistake and put it on the stick of Connor McDavid with any amount of space, and he's going to make you look ridiculous. That's not what we're talking about here. I think the real estate in that series is going to really be difficult to come by. There's not going to be a whole lot of space out there. It's going to be tight checking. So again, is there a patience or a maturity in Edmonton's game to deal with that, to overcome that? Because that's going to be a formidable challenge. But as we were coming to this segment, I heard you guys talk about the Avs and the Oilers last night, and why they'd start Stu Skinner. And I think we all saw the same thing and wondered the same thing, as that game quickly got out of hand, which led me to the obvious question. I mean, aside from that, they felt like he needed to touch the puck. The problem was he didn't really touch the puck.
He'd love to have touched it a little more.
He would have loved to have touched that puck. But they're not worried about their goaltending at all in Edmonton. Not even a little bit. And maybe that's because they're looking across the sheet and they're most likely going to face Cam Talbot, through a good chunk of that series. But generally speaking, they feel pretty good. They feel like their goaltending is good enough to win. We'll see.
What's your read on McDavid? He, of course, played the one game after coming back from injury to some degree, and then you sit on the final night. But any intel or any idea what kind of level of injury that is, or level of concern around that injury for the team?
Well, no to the specifics of the injury. The level of concern was minimal. In fact, I think he was a bit annoyed that they wanted him to not only sit out a couple of games, but sit out 3. And by the time you get to the back-to-back Friday, Saturday, like, why would you play him in the back-to-back? And then they gave him the extra game. So, he ends up with the assist that, he wanted to get for the milestone. But he's a gamer, right? He didn't feel like he had to miss, but there was something there. There was a reason to sit him back. And at that point of the regular season, that's what you do when you're subscribing to load management. Obviously, if they'd been in a playoff fight, he would have been in the lineup. So, they thought that one game was sufficient, but to give him the extra games to make sure that he was ready, that was more in an abundance of caution.
I want to go to Vancouver. Let's stay with the Canadian teams, where I know a lot of our attention will be, and certainly a lot of the broadcast attention as well. Quinn Hughes was playing U16 AAA hockey in Toronto the last time the Canucks hosted a playoff game. They did have that one pseudo run in the bubble in Edmonton, but I don't know how much you can lean on anything from that postseason in the bubble. Yeah. How much is inexperience something that the Canucks are worried about, or trying to make up for?
They don't seem overly worried about it. And I guess you don't know until you get into those games, until you drop the puck in the opening game of that 7-game series and see how it plays out. There is some concern with what they're going to get from the Nashville Predators. And maybe that's to your point too, because, you've got a goaltender who can be game-changing in UC Saros. Not that Thatcher Demko isn't capable of that, but we got to see it, right? You've got Roman Josi, who the Vancouver Canucks have spent a lot of time poring over video watching, because we know that he's an excellent offensive player. We know that he's really solid defensively. They're not sharing, but they feel tactically like they've got a way to beat what he's capable of. And at times he can be that fourth forward for you out there. But Andrew Burnett has this group dialed in Nashville. He does. I mean, they're a straight line hockey club, and they go hard, kind of similar to what you see in the Carolina Hurricanes in the East. So how is Vancouver going to overcome that? Yeah, Quinn Hughes, can show us the flash and dash, and he can do a lot of great things with the puck. He can skate that puck out of trouble. But, there's not a lot of time or space out there, or shouldn't be in the playoffs. There really shouldn't be. I think it goes beyond defense in this series, even though we're talking about Josi and Hughes. If Elias Pettersson doesn't find some sort of offensive touch, they've got a big problem, right? Because then that piles a lot onto the other elements, and now you take a matchup component out of the equation. He's got to be able to drive a line, and he hasn't done that since the All-Star break. So if he doesn't find his touch and he doesn't find it, then the Vancouver Canucks are going to be in a tough jam, because Nashville is no pushover here.
What about Winnipeg, Colorado? I've been saying this isn't a 1 versus 8 kind of thing. It's just you're going to lose a pretty entertaining game or entertaining team after round 1, regardless here. Yeah. And I just feel like, I don't know why. I think we're maybe just a little bit jaded towards the Jets, and you watch Colorado and McKinnon takes another step. It feels like he's that he's Hart Trophy level now, and the Chushkin, and you need to go into it. But reading this morning that the Avs had 3 wins over playoff teams since March 1st. Their straight up record on the road, 19-22. Now, it's nitpicking. It's maybe going to find what you're looking to find, I suppose. But I guess handicap this series for us, because in net, it seems like it's a stark advantage for the Jets. Is that enough to seemingly get them past this offensive juggernaut of the Avs?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to answer, and then I want Rhett to jump in on this, because I want his opinion, because it's going to bolster what I'm about to say here. I have Winnipeg making it to the Western Conference Final in an all-Canadian matchup with the Edmonton Oilers. I do. It starts number 1 with the goaltending of the Winnipeg Jets. The season series, does that stuff really matter? I mean, Winnipeg swept Colorado in the season series and just slapped them sideways recently in that 7-0 debacle. Now, we heard Rick talking to the Vancouver Canucks about 3 weeks ago when Colorado came back to beat the Canucks, said whatever was in the intermission going into the third, Nate McKinnon decided he was going to take the game, and that's what he did. He's capable of that. Makar is capable of that. Rantanen is capable of that. So here's where I think Winnipeg, if Winnipeg can check their egos individually, and guys can accept a certain role and embrace the responsibility in that role individually, I think Winnipeg does have enough to go to the Western Conference Final. If Edmonton does all the things the Oilers need to do, I think they're better, and I think they make it to the Stanley Cup Final. But that ego check and that embracing of individual responsibility, that could be Winnipeg's toughest challenge. I'm not going to single out guys. I wonder, Rhett, if that's real based on your experience, because that's what I'm told.
It's for sure real. And I think that if all the teams I went to the finals with were similar to Winnipeg, and maybe not even as good. Okay. You had a goaltender, and you started there and you went out. And back check, block shots.
Yeah.
If you do those two things, you now have a chance. Again, I think Winnipeg's capable of scoring goals. I don't think Colorado's goaltending is going to be a factor at all. I think it's going to be a detriment to their success. And I do believe if you've got a goaltender and you can convince all of your guys every time they're on the ice that the back check and the blocking of shots is, you can win the series right there. Because regular season, you got guys that sacrifice. A guy like Tanev always blocks shots, but you don't always get that from your players. If all those guys buy into doing all the little things defensively to stop, because they are going to get opportunities. But if you're diving in front of those shots, Rantanen's, McKinnon's, Makar's, you're going to have a chance. And Hellebuck's going to backstop you. So I like the Jets, actually.
So do I.
I just hate that the Avs are, Jesus, like, how can that team be an underdog? Look at the superstars. They won with bloody Kemper 2 years ago.
I know.
And it was like perfect storm last year. Nichushkin leaves mid-series against Seattle. Like, it is one of those series you mentioned, Dean, where it's like, I think both of these teams are good enough to win the West.
Yeah, I really do. And I wonder, it's always easier said than done. But the one thing I wonder about Winnipeg, that how do you beat the Avs? Well, you have a blueprint from a year ago. Can you go back and see essentially the same Colorado team? How did the Kraken do it? How did Colorado come up short in that series? And can you get lightning in a bottle a second time? I don't know. They just, I'm with you. To see Colorado as an underdog and without home ice, I would not have guessed.
It sounds ridiculous.
Sure. For sure. What kind of, you talk about unfair, the Leafs have had a fine season. Bruins beat the Leafs 4-0 in the season series. Leafs have given up over goals against of over 4 in their last 9 games. The Bruins have the playoff, everything. There would be no shame. There's there's nothing. You lose to Boston, a lot of teams are going to lose to Boston. But what is the potential fallout in Toronto, coach, player, otherwise, if they don't get by the Bruins here again?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but I just want to offer something quick on the West before we shift over.
Sure,
here.
Of course.
And that's the Dallas-Vegas series. So Alex Pietrangelo is good to go. He's going to play in game 1. And that's a real significant add. Mark Stone is 1 scan away from being available in game 1. So 1 MRI away from having his spleen healed enough that he's good to go. He practiced yesterday and arguably was the best player on the sheet. I know it's practice, but he's a gamer. Those 2 pieces come into play, and I believe in Dallas. I think Dallas is loaded for bear here, but that's game-changing. That's the only way Vegas wins, is with those 2 customers. So just an update there. Now, Toronto, if Toronto can get out of its own way, just get rid of the ghosts. Exercise the Boston Bruins demons. They'll be fine. They gave Ilya Samsonov a little bit extra time this week, to work on his game. And he probably needed it. But I'll tell you this, since he cleared waivers and, went down to the American League and hit that reset, he's been lights out good. He's been lights out good. He really has been. Joe Woll, who will back up, he's been just okay. So they've got a decent tandem there, but it'll largely rest on the shoulders of Ilya Samsonov. I'm okay with Toronto is up front. Toronto is better than the Boston Bruins up front. Collectively, they are.
Yeah, especially down the middle, Dregs.
Down the middle, of course, sure. They're not going to have Bobby McMann to start the series. And who'd have thought 20 games ago we'd be talking about Bobby McMann as being potentially a difference maker for the Maple Leafs. but he kind of developed into that. I mean, next to Austin Matthews, nobody was more productive or consistent in the second half in 5-on-5 goals than Bobby McMahon. You know, he gave them a real nice punch in their top 9. He's got a knee issue, so that's going to take some of the steam out. So they'll go with Bertuzzi, Matthews, and Max Domi. Chemistry between Domi and Matthews has been real sharp, you know, over the last dozen games or so. It sounds like they're going to leave Nylander on the third line. So your second line looks like Matthew Nyes with John Tavares and Mitch Marner. I'd be real surprised if Keefe doesn't flip Nyes and Willie and put Nylander into that second line. He's got to get going. I mean, Sheldon Keefe made a comment, and he wasn't trying to be critical, but man, it sounded that way, where he talked about, yeah, you know what, Nylander checked out on the regular season a long time ago. Well, is that a good thing? Like, I get it when you're going into game 80, 81, 82, when you've been in that third lock for a long time, but come on. Guy's got 4 assists in 11 games. So on paper, Toronto should win this series. I've picked them to win this series. I'm as bold as to say in 6.
Wow.
But there's a lot that has to happen. It's not just on the big boys in Toronto. Their defense isn't that good, by the way, in Toronto. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, and it's been sort of pieced together. They haven't really had a healthy unit. There's a lot of guys that can play sort of 4 through 7 there that haven't been healthy at the same time.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Excited for the Florida matchup as always. It's not a rich, long history, but it's a good one. These two teams, there's a natural built-in dislike, which you don't always need in the playoffs, but it sure helps sometimes. I don't know, as good as Tampa Bay has been, I feel like when you look around the league, Florida might be one of those teams that just feels like they're built for the playoffs as well as anybody. You want to run and gun and score, they can do it. You want to grind, you want to muck, you want to be, a couple dirt balls in there, some balls of muck that'll do it that way. And with Bobrovsky, you might have the best goalie in the world on any given night. You just never know. I do like the Panthers.
Well, ditto Vasilevsky, right? What a series.
That one's going to be fascinating. I did the podcast with Ferraro, and we had Jeff O'Neill on earlier today, and I asked if that series was positioned for the potential of an upset. Could Tampa Bay, because of what Nikita Kucherov accomplished this year? By the way, I mean, those that I trust inside the Lightning organization, and it's pretty obvious given the numbers that he posted, but they've given him the credit to the point of where they've said he found another level to his game. And not just in point production, every single night in how he approached every single game. It wasn't just about the collection of points. There was a meanness in his game. We know how sneaky dirty he can be, but it was just his approach to every single game. We'll try and do that for 82. Well, when you do it and you're an elite level skill set like Nikita Kucherov, you put up almost 150 regular season points. So if he can continue to push, Stamkos is healthy, Braden Point can be game change. I mean, go down the list. Nicky Paul of late has come on strong, and that guy was built for the playoffs. And we haven't even talked about the goaltending, right? I guess the one weakness I would wonder about with Tampa Bay, and not long ago, we were looking at that blue line in Tampa Bay and saying, that's a blue line. Like, I mean, it's not what it once was, right? It just isn't. They brought in Matt Dumba. Does he help? I mean, maybe a little bit. Chernak, he's good. He's big. He's strong. Block shots. He can do a lot of good things. I look at the blue line of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that would worry me a little bit, especially the way the Florida Panthers like to forecheck. So if you
no Sergachev too, right, Dregs?
Yeah, what is Sergachev?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Do we know what?
Like it.
What his timeline is?
It's something that we don't. Although again, I was told he's getting closer. So what's that code for? Like any game? Like never? Like this time of year, you're not getting much out of clubs. But that's going to be a fascinating series. Most are picking Florida to come out of the East. Most that I deal with, just because of the experience and everything they can throw your way. But they're going to have to earn it in this Battle of Florida.
How as far as giving a team fits, Patrick Waugh and the Islanders against Carolina. So it's 3 consecutive 50-win seasons. With Carolina, it's just one of those teams. They're just real good. They're well coached. They're deep, the whole thing, to the point you almost don't pay attention to them. So good. I just wonder, Varlamov seems like he's taken over the crease here in the last 6 weeks or so from Sorokin. And Patrick Waugh has made a difference. They did not look like a playoff team. They rattled off, I think, 2 6-game winning streaks after Waugh took over behind the bench.
Yeah.
Is there an upset? Or I guess just as you look at all of these series, do you see an upset that's prime, or might it be this one? What do you see in Carolina? Because they need to do something soon, I would think.
Yeah, I don't see an upset in the Carolina Islanders series. You know, for my money, I see Florida, Carolina, the New York Rangers are the top 3 teams in the East, in my opinion, going into the playoffs. Carolina is just so well coached and so well built. And the addition of Jake Gensel, boys, I mean, he's the real deal. He just is. That wasn't a gamble as a trade deadline ad, you know, a rental player that often doesn't work out. This guy, you know, he's just really, really good. He is. So you've got that. I don't see an upset there. Washington, the New York Rangers, again, I don't think so. The Rangers are excellent. I mean, they win the President's Trophy, you know, and there's good reason behind that. In fact, they've got Philip Hedl, who has been skating for a while, practicing for a while, who they're saying they're not rushing back into the lineup, but another good source close to Hedl says he's available. We add him into the mix, and now, you know, you're adding volume to your collection of star assets with the New York Rangers. And, you know, with all due respect to the goaltending in Washington, Lindgren took over there. Shesterkin's as good as any when he's on his game, and he's been on his game for a while. So those 2 teams, New York Rangers and Carolina, I don't see an upset in either one of those series.
How will they use Rempe? Because I think if it was the Islanders and you get an emotional rivalry and the Islanders have some size and physicality, I think you let them run around. But with Washington, they're just such heavy favorites. I don't know that there's a 4th line that you worry about. I don't know that you want him out against Tom Wilson's line. Do you sort of see him as that nuclear weapon that Laviolette can sort of keep in his holster until he needs them?
I think so. Use sparingly. And it's not like the kid can't play the game. He's just never played in a Stanley Cup playoff game before. We've seen the body of the work in a small sample size in the regular season. We know what he's capable of physically, but you can't take a major penalty in a playoff game, right? I mean, now all of a sudden you're setting yourself up for disaster because that Capitals power play can still get the job done. So I'd be careful with that one, you know, especially if Hedl is an option, you know, and you've got other pieces up front that you can incorporate. You know, we know that not that Rempe is one-dimensional. We don't know what he's capable of yet because we haven't seen enough of him at the NHL level. We know the physicality, the fighting and all that, which normally, you know, isn't really a factor in the playoffs. But I would think that series would have to turn ugly quick in order to bring him into the mix. I don't see it.
But keeping your eye on the Worlds, Canada, obviously, World Championships. The Flames are one of those teams that are out early, would have some candidates. Have you monitored that much at all?
I have, and I haven't heard anything yet out of Calgary specifically. But there is some news that's coming out of Team Canada. I just tweeted while we're talking here. Penguins GM Kyle Dubas has been added as an associate GM to Team Canada for the Men's Worlds. Jared McCann from the Seattle Kraken is joining. Dawson Mercer from the New Jersey Devils is joining. They're still looking for goalies. They're waiting on a couple of guys. And I don't want to mention their names in case they don't go, but I will mention a couple of forwards who aren't going, which I don't get. One of them is Nick Suzuki with the Montreal Canadiens, and the other one is Travis Konechny from the Philadelphia Flyers. And look, I mean, players have personal commitments, right? And Hockey Canada, Team Canada has always been, they've been okay with it, as long as it's legit. You got a family wedding, you're not going to miss a family wedding. You're just not. If you've got a wedding or whatever it is in July, okay, come on. Yeah, throw on the maple leaf and let's get at it here. And it matters more now than it has for years, because Doug Armstrong, who's the overseer of the international events, is the general manager for the 26 Olympics. If Nick Suzuki and Travis Konechny want to be in the mix, well, it would make sense that they would jump on board for the men's worlds. And then maybe they have a good showing. They continue to play well at the NHL level. That puts them in good standing for the Four Nations in 25. And then you play your way into position for 26. So it just, puts a little tick beside your name when you're saying no to invites.
Rhett.
Yeah, I said no as the 16th invite.
It's a double tick. No to Lanny. How do you do that?
An invite's an invite. Yeah.
Jeff O'Neill tells a similar story. Maybe it was around the same time. He scored 41 in Carolina. They lose out in the first round. Lanny calls him, right? Says, Jeff, we really like your game. You had a good series. Too bad. You got lots left in the tank. He goes, yeah, Lanny, I'm not coming. I bug him about it all the time. Yeah, you know what? I scored 41. We lost in the playoffs. I'm going golfing. See you later.
Yeah,
good luck.
Which is very on brand for O-Dog. That's very O-Dog.
That's very O-Dog.
Yeah. Don Granato out in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Kevin Adams says he wants someone with experience. You brought it up. There's 15, 16 guys with NHL head coaching experience that were assistants across the league. There's plenty of guys that have that kind of experience. How attractive is a Buffalo job? And I guess it depends what happens in round one, but how many jobs do you expect will be open potentially heading into
it's hard to say. I mean, when I look across the lineup, I don't see anything that jumps off the page as glaring. I might wonder about Winnipeg, and not because the Winnipeg Jets want to push away from Rick Bowness, but regardless of how deep the Winnipeg Jets go, Bones has had some issues this year, both with his health, his wife's health. He's just all in with his family, as we all are. But he was kidding who. This is his last kick at the cat, whether it's this year or this is his last head coaching job in the NHL. So, could he be, because of family reasons, drawn to call it a career? But in the bigger picture, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, some have wondered about John Cooper and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, I don't see that happening, but I guess stranger things have happened. Sheldon Keefe and the Toronto Maple Leafs, Boomer, you alluded to that a bit earlier as we talked about the Leafs and the Bruins. If Toronto gets kicked around and they lose in 4 or 5, all bets are off, right? I think all bets are off. Buffalo, Kevin Adams he's down the road here already. He had his media availability after dusting Donnie Granato and the staff, or some of the staff. And, he promised that he was going to get at it, and he's done so in earnest. He really, truly has. He's got permission from a couple of teams to speak with experienced guys available. Doesn't want any names out there. The only one I'm comfortable throwing out there would be a Craig Berube, who, again, I'm biased. I think he'd be a terrific fit. Just looking at his track record, what he did in St. Louis when he came in at the time, how he grew with that group and helped develop them into a Stanley Cup champion. And, Buffalo is considered a juicy job. It is. They underachieved this year. There's work that needs to get done to that roster. But if you're a head coach looking for a job, even a decorated guy like Berube, Buffalo would be a nice fit. So we'll see.
They just have a lot of pieces coming into their prime, don't they, Dregs? Yeah, like when you talk about juicy, it's just that the age of the roster, right?
Well, and part of the to jump in, part of the reason the complaints around Buffalo is not talent or abilities. It's the pushing of and holding accountable, where a guy like Berube would answer that very quickly.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Like everybody who's played for him just says the same thing. There's some who wonder about the X's and O's and tactical stuff, but I I wouldn't call it a weakness, but that's how you surround yourself with good staff too, right? Try and bluff your way around how you think you played when you're eye to eye and you're staring at Craig Berube and he's calling BS. right? Hey, Owen, how do you think you played last night? Owen Power. Yeah, I think I was okay. No, you were hoarse. You know what? Like, so and Adams did talk about responsibility and accountability. He put it on himself as general manager, so the clock is ticking on him, right? He knows that. That's fine. He can live with that. And he put it at the skates of the players. And so I think just organically, Buffalo is going to be better.
So how does TSN's Hockey Insider? Have you got multiple screens at the at Chateau Dreger? How do we take in the playoffs?
Well, so I'm going to Winnipeg on Sunday for the first 2 games of that series, but we'll be in studio doing pre and post. Across the board. I mean, primarily we're focused on Toronto and Boston, but they put together a real nice lounge at the TSN headquarters. And I'm talking like lavish surroundings, sensational.
Yeah.
The only thing that's a little off-putting is the O-Dog comes in his, I call them soft pants. They're sweatpants, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's lost a ton of weight. I mean, he's carving himself into decent shape right now. It used to be the buttons on the dress shirt didn't quite get done, and the belly would be there, and there'd be bodily functions happening throughout the game that were disturbing. So I think with that's cleaned up, I'm hoping. But now mostly we have a good time until post game, and then we get to work.
Yeah, very nice, Dregs. Appreciate you. Enjoy Winnipeg.
Yeah, I will.
Take care of yourself.
Okay, boys. Have a good one. Enjoy the playoffs.
There's Dregs.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.